Quick update to November 22 regarding the 3 police officers that emotionally and physically assaulted a young dad in front of his child at Trout Lake Park in October of 2022. We've got, and then the audio recording evidence that was provided to the Vancouver Police regarding a separate matter in which the Vancouver Police ignored a child rape. They ignored the evidence, possibly on behalf of a very powerful Catholic family. We've contacted the Vancouver Police, numerous agencies within, and none have responded. We've contacted the Vancouver Police Board. They have ignored all requests for information and answers. And the Vancouver Police are still refusing to disclose if it was truly a criminal order they were following and was the reason they beat this dad up, or whether it was a family law civil order, which are handed out like candy in the highly for-profit corrupt family court system. So I guess they're caught kind of in a bind right now, so they've chosen just to ignore. So they've ignored all FOI requests, which by law I don't think they're allowed to, but the Vancouver Police, yeah, they kind of have their own rules. It's a highly separated organization from the federal RCMP, so they really answer to nobody except dirty politicians within. So a little explanation of what the Vancouver Police Board is. It is a board designed to essentially cover the ass of the police. It's to give the illusion that there is third-party accountability. So what they do is they advertise that they hire, diversity such as women and different cultures within the board, but then they do not provide information to the board members. They leave them in the dark, and so the board members are essentially just a smiling face, and unbeknownst to them, they're just a rubber stamp to Vancouver police corruption, and it's very unfortunate. In this case, the Vancouver Police Board, who is apparently made up of civilians, there's no email contacts for them, there's no phone numbers for them, so they may not even know that this video of the 3 Vancouver police officers beating this young man up in front of his child even exists, and that we are trying to get information regarding that video, whether the Vancouver Police are again enforcing civil orders, which they are not supposed to be enforcing civil orders. I've had quite a few reports of the Vancouver Police beating people up or preventing parents from seeing their own children on behalf of in what's called the family law cartel, which is the judicial system in Canada, the for-profit multi-billion-dollar judicial family law system in Canada. That's essentially plugging up our courts and is one of the reasons that crime and homelessness and debauchery is taking place on the Vancouver streets, as they hire judge after judge, which is liberal or federal friends, friends of friends, and they make them judges. And there's always a need for more judges because of essentially corruption all through the system, and the family law courts handing out order after order against usually young dads in general, keeping them from their children, and the Vancouver Police using their resources to brutally enforce these reckless, essentially corrupt orders that judges are handing out again like candy. I've talked about how I had an order against me, even though I didn't drink, didn't smoke, have no criminal history, yet I had an order on me, and the Vancouver Police prevented me from seeing my own sons, which now are doing horrible in life, essentially kept from me through this highly corrupt for-profit system. But yes, the Vancouver Police Board, it's just a rubber stamp organization. And then within the Vancouver Police system themselves, the FOI department, that's the Freedom of Information, which is supposed to have transparency and such, they are just ignoring all emails that are going to them requesting information, not even responding, just ignoring it because they can. All right, update to November 10th, 2022 regarding the 2 files. The looks like the Vancouver Police Board, the Vancouver Police Board has made contact now, finally, and they have had this interim, Ted Bruce, make contact with me and try to downplay the file to just saying, oh, it's just an FOI file you want, and we'll get back to you regarding that. It obviously is way, way bigger than that. Often what these organizations will do, where the Vancouver Police Board is supposed to be civilians, and they'll bring in somebody like a Ted Bruce. I'm not saying that's what they did here, but they'll bring in a professional lawyer. They'll make him in turn head of the board until the file is cleaned up and whitewashed. So it is interesting that this Ted Bruce, is all of a sudden a temporary director of the Vancouver Police Board. Very suspect, but yeah, he tries to downplay it here. Very unfortunate. So I sent an email back to him just saying, no, this is way bigger than just a simple FOI request from the police board themselves. Be interesting to see what happens there. The Vancouver Police Information and Privacy Unit within the Vancouver Police has also now made contact with me. I've been making lots of waves throughout government that these people are just ignoring me, and so finally they've made contact. The Information and Privacy Unit within the Vancouver Police is very suspect. It should be not an in-house organization, but it is very suspect. One hand, knowing what the other hand is doing, that's not full transparency. But anyways, they want more information from me. I sent them extreme details. I held some back only because I don't trust that they'll do this FOI file complete, and I do have some of the names of officers involved at the time. One interesting one was a guy named Strickland from the Ministry of Children was somewhat involved, and I noticed he was in the newspaper a couple years later. I believe he was in major hot water. I don't want to say anything about that, but it was something really, really horrific from what I remember. But anyways, what happens here is these two organizations now are going to play administrative games. Essentially, it's corruption, right? It's just a lot of foot dragging. It's a lot of double talk. It's a lot of wording things in certain ways, as the police board has, trying to minimize my request into a simple FOI file when it's much bigger than that. It's more than just simple information. It's supposed to be about dialogue. It's supposed to be about progressive. What can we do about this? How can we fix this? But that's not what it's about. These guys are going to all lawyer up and practice the art of administrative stalling, and nobody learns anything from this except, they pat each other on the back that they were able to whitewash another situation, as Vancouver's eroding, socially eroding. Interesting, they still use fax. The federal government, I think, has even moved on in the last year from fax, but that's another administrative hurdle. If you have documents you want to send, these organizations will say, well, you have to send them through fax, and we know that nobody uses fax anymore. And even if you do use fax, at the other end, that would have to be scanned, copied and scanned, and put into electronic file, thus involving more people such in the office, which would be that's where a breach could take place. Multi-million dollar deals are done via email now. So, this is nonsense that they're still using fax in 2022. But we'll see what happens here with this file and how long the Vancouver police can stall out on this. Okay, bit of an update here regarding the Trout Lake assault. The three police officers that assaulted the dad in front of his child, and then the separate instance of the Vancouver police covering up the rape of a young child. That was a separate incident, completely separate from the Trout Lake. But yeah, when I watched the video of the dad being beaten up and taken away from his child, I just couldn't help but think of the rape I reported and the Vancouver police that covered it up. So the quick explanation of all these organizations that are just quasi-police and government organizations that pay each other copious amounts of money to essentially whitewash and cover up crimes by the establishment, which is the police. But they're low in the rung. They just follow orders from the upper government, but they do get some joy out of beating people up and stuff. But the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner has now responded. It's the only organization that has responded. And they have, you can see the letter here. Okay, so I'd like to explain a little bit how corruption works in Canada with their writing skills. You can see here that the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner send a letter, just a whitewash letter, and it's just legal speak for telling citizens such as myself that report rape and violence rape cover-up by the police and violence by the police, just to basically screw off, like we answer to nobody. The OPCC is made up of politicians and ex high-ranking cops, so there's no accountability at all, and there's so many of these organizations set up in Canada. People are starting to lose trust in government, and this is one of the reasons. So, but they're very skillful at their letters. Well, they used to be more skillful, but they're now they realize that they answer to nobody, so they're even getting a little lazy. But this is the response letter from the OPCC. I'll let you read it. But what they do is they never name the police officers. They never even mention anything about the two incidents that were reported, the police were reported for, the Trout Lake beatdown and the Vancouver police covering up the child rape. So in the OPC letter, they don't even acknowledge that was what the complaint was. All they do is they send a email with the file number on it. And what this is, and the reason they do this, is to sever any investigation down the road. So if someone would read all the responses by the OPCC, which is the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner, they wouldn't be able to understand what took place. So normally in school we had to write a summary. So you start out, your first paragraph is a summary of the complaint, and the OPCC should have done this, but they intentionally don't. And this way they sever all the facts out of the communication just prior to whitewashing it. Again, many people are losing trust in government, and for good reason, because the Vancouver Police, the OPCC, the police board, city council members, etc., there's zero accountability with any level of governance in Canada, and people are starting to get sick of it. But I thought it was really important to show the kind of letter that the OPCC writes and how they go about it. And it's not by accident. They are a highly corrupt and highly sophisticated government organization. And so I'm going to explain a little bit about the difference between corruption in what we call simple countries and corruption in Canada. In other countries, we think of bribes. So say the dirty police or the Vancouver police spokesman who lied. If they wanted to cover that up, in other countries there would be a quick exchange of money, and things would happen, things would go away, right? We think of, maybe Mexico, that's the way that their corruption works, or, South America and all that, in our minds, but, we don't know that, but that's the way we think of it, the way we see it on TV. The difference in Canada is how our corruption works is the money comes up front. So the people that work at the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner and other regulatory boards, such as the highly corrupt BC Ombudsman, they're paid extravagant wages right up front. So it doesn't look like corruption. I mean, like Jay Chalk is the ombudsman for BC, and the ombudsman's office is, I've done videos on that. It's extremely corrupt, like just disgusting. But he's paid $350,000 per year, with tons of days off, with tons of benefits. So his incentive when he gets the call to cover something up is already there. There doesn't have to be any more exchange of money because he essentially just keeps his job for, essentially corruption. And if he continues to do the job the way he's told to do it by the higher ups, then he keeps his sweet $350,000 a year job. So that's the difference between corruption in Canada and corruption around the world. Again, Canada, the money comes up front. And, you can go on the website and see, oh, look, this guy makes $350,000. He must be pretty good. It almost gives the illusion he's really, really smart and really, really honest. And that's why he gets $350,000. No, the reason he gets $350,000 is the people above him know if he doesn't do as he's told, he loses his $350,000 a year gig. And that is the exact same way the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner works, in that these people make hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars per year to do the bidding of the central government, which is the leaders in the corruption. And with that said, they also pay the CBC and other organizations to sell their propaganda that it's all legit and everyone's happy and these regulatory boards are doing their job, etc., but they're not. They're highly corrupt, highly layered, so it's layer upon layer upon layer. And in this case, we're looking at a month down the road and we haven't got a response from the police board. We haven't got a response from the FOI department of the Vancouver police regarding the stuff that was apparently released to the news media, Global and CBC. We can't get that information. They got it in like 15 minutes, but here we are a month down the road and we're not getting any of that information. Not even redacted documents we're not even getting. And then we got the OPCC here, basically in legalese, not even good legalese, just terrible legalese, just basically saying, we rubber stamp this, we whitewash this, and there's nothing you can do about it because essentially Vancouver and the Vancouver police and essentially the regulatory boards in Canada are so beyond corrupt that they don't even care anymore to even try. So again, this should have had a summary explaining the 2 complaints and then a reason. So they did no summary, no names of the police officers, no names of anybody. And then basically in the last paragraph, they just say, basically, go pound sand. We're not investigating. We're going to leave it, put it back on the shoulders of our chief of police who, wow, you can't say enough about how corrupt the Vancouver police is and how corrupt Canada is. And it's just absolutely disgusting. So hopefully you'll pause and read throughout these documents and just see what a farce accountability is in Canada. And I really believe that's the key here. The major key is there is zero accountability for anybody running Canada, including the police and police officers and people in government. There is absolutely zero accountability, and thus they get emboldened and they get more corrupt and more corrupt and more brazen and more corrupt, and it just grows like a cancer in our society. And then they wonder why people no longer trust authority, and they no longer they no longer trust our government anymore. It's gone off the rails and they don't trust the system, and then they the whole thing is essentially going to fall apart. And I do care, but there's nothing I can do except keep exposing corruption, and but to no avail. It's almost gotten so corrupt that it is now like a freight train, and it's got so much momentum that it's impossible to stop. Like, even if someone stands in front of, all the corrupt organizations, the Vancouver Police Board, the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner, the Vancouver Police, the City of Vancouver, the federal government, you cannot jump out and say, hey, you guys got to stop all this corruption and whitewashing and minimizing and reducing and covering up rapes and covering up beatdowns. You got to truly investigate these, but you can't. It's just gotten too big, and the government's gotten just too cumbersome, too powerful, and almost everybody in government now knows that there is zero accountability. Thus, they become more emboldened, and then it's just a vicious cycle of the cancer, the social cancer, the political cancer of this that's eating away the fabric of this country. And I just think it's so important for these videos to come out. But I mean, chances are maybe a couple hundred people will even open the video, maybe 5 people will read it. This is more of a history lesson, I guess, because maybe in 10 years, when the whole system falls apart, someone will look back and go, oh yeah, we used to look at those YouTube videos and see the corruption, and why didn't anybody do anything about it, right? But I digress. It is now been about a month since these 2 incidences were reported. Basically, police corruption and beating a young man up and then covering up a child rape. There was even more to that too, but I don't want to overwhelm the audience. And it's now late November of 2022.